Hello, everyone. This is Wabona Kemonyane coming to you from Gaborone, Botswana. Botswana being right here in the center of Southern Africa. And today is our inaugural podcast called Growth Well. Now, here in our African continent, our communities used to move around. Some of them were nomads, and they will settle in places where there is adequate water, whether it's a water spring or they will actually have to dig up a well for their water supply and for their nutrients. Hence, our podcast called Growth Well, which is going to bring you hopefully some nutrients, whether as an entrepreneur or someone who wants to grow 10x. So the choice is yours, but we're really looking forward to having fun and bringing some insights for you. Now, for this specific episode, as an introductory one, I will brief you about who we are, who I am, and my experience that I'll be bringing to this podcast, and why we're doing it in terms of, especially from an African context. You'll know that we've got a lot of challenges, but I'm eager that we have to catch up with the world in terms of closing the gap in the development index. Also, the objectives of why we want to do it and how we're going to do it, the topics we're going to cover as we're going to be running this on a weekly basis, and also importantly, our target audience, which is primarily, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been doing it for 30 years, and I wish to share some of my insights in terms of experiences of both successes and failures that I've gone through. The approach, by and large, will be really to have as much fun as possible, as much insights from experts from across the world, from our continent, from here in Botswana, where we've got various experts that will show those insights. But importantly, we will be based on evidence. So empirical data will be used to ensure that whatever we put forward is based on the truth. As they say, progress starts with the truth. Now, in terms of myself, as Wabona has already introduced myself, I have over 30 years experience in industry. 25 years of it was consulting, helping companies with their strategies, with performance. So those would be primarily where I'll be coming from in terms of sharing my experience. Importantly, I've also, under my belt, got a couple of companies that I've started, with InnoLead Consulting being the primary one where these insights were picked up. And you'll hear a lot about some of my experiences when doing consulting with my team through our InnoLead team. We also have a technology company called Digital Hire, which does infrastructure and technology. We have a farming, which is a big thing for us Africans, being always close to earth. So I'll share some of the stories about our farming enterprise in terms of Manenzo farming, where we do cattle breeding and other livestock units. We also have an energy company called Bot Energy. So all those experiences will be shared through this podcast in terms of how we've managed to succeed. But importantly, I've also had some really dramatic failures, which I will share with yourself so that you can also pick learnings from those as well. Now, we're hoping that with this 30 years experience and also through InnoLead, I've been able to join some really good global entrepreneurship coaching programs like the one that I attend in Canada on a quarterly basis, where I interact with some of the top entrepreneurs in the world under the guidance of one of the top entrepreneurial coaches, Mr. Dan Sullivan. So I'll also share some of the experiences from him. Now, what about the topics? What are we going to be sharing so that you now know that next week you got to be with us on this Growth Well podcast? Importantly, this is who I am. I'm an entrepreneur. So by and large, we will be talking about entrepreneurship. And for me, this is very passionate because, in my view, the world depends on entrepreneurs for it to grow. We know that the United States of America and other countries have been built behind entrepreneurs, and I believe that Africa has a huge opportunity in terms of the grand challenges that we've got to be able to grow our entrepreneurs. So, with my 30 years experience, with the failures and successes, we hope that we can be able to inspire entrepreneurs, not just across Africa, but also across the world at large. The other one, which is extremely passionate for me, is technology. You will be amazed as to what's going on around the world these days in terms of technology. So we'll be looking at what they call accelerating technologies, the technologies that are predicted to grow 10x. Some of them, the capabilities are growing so fast and the prices are plummeting, making it accessible for everybody. So technology is being democratized. It's also being demonetized, really making it easier for entrepreneurs, whether you are a startup, whether you are actually in a public service and you are aspiring to become an entrepreneur. So these technologies make it easier for you to drive a startup and be able to close this gap. So there is an abundance of technologies that you can use, whether it's AI, whether it's energy, solar, wind, drones, quantum computing, anything, personalized medicine, biotech. So all these will share in terms of trends and will have access to some of the top scientists and some of the top people in Africa and the globe so that we're all on par in terms of what's going on in these technologies across the world. The other one that's extremely passionate for me as well is culture. Because in the end, it's about mindsets. Are we in the right mindsets to be able to leverage these technologies, to be able to drive entrepreneurship, to also join the world in terms of developing our own unicorns? I once saw a study in terms of how, from unicorns and billionaires, we're still dominated by Asia, by Europe, and in Africa, we still have very few unicorns. And these are billion-dollar companies. And I think in Africa, we still have an opportunity to be able to also develop our own unicorn landscape. So agility, boldness, diversity, all those are key ingredients that support the right mindset for us to be able to grow. So Growth Well will be providing also the science of the mindset of things that you need to be in the right mindset to be able to grow. Also, another topic, which I hope you will be with us throughout, is the science of happiness. I've always know that you cannot do anything, go into high performance unless you are in a happy state of mind. So we'll again visit the art of happiness, the science of happiness, and we have experts like people like Professor Martin Seligman out of UPenn, who is renowned as the father of positive psychology. So we'll have access to those type of people so that also in Africa, we can ground ourselves in terms of why we are always on the wrong side of the statistics when it comes to well-being and happiness. And without having a happy society, for me, is going to be a hindrance in terms of growth of our continent. So the big why. Why are we doing this? Why should we do this podcast called Growth Well? Well, the first thing is that the world is hungry to learn about African issues from Africans. So that's one of the big things that we are really driven to put this before you in terms of the landscape of Africa so that the world out there can know, even investors can know the complexities of our entrepreneurial landscape. They could learn when we profile our entrepreneurs in terms of funding and so forth. So that is another one of the whys why we're doing this. The other good thing is that we are blessed endowed with such natural resources. I mean, we talk about the DRC and its minerals. We talk about Botswana with our history of diamonds that we've been doing for now almost 50 years, over 50 years now. We talk about copper in Zambia. So we have, and then our fertile soils, our good tropical climate that we should be producing like what Ukraine and others are producing to the world. So for me, we have opportunities that we can really capitalize and join in this African rise. So Growth Well, the intention is also to really contribute to this Africa Rise campaign that we talked about. Importantly, the accelerating technologies that I referred to earlier, those are also providing opportunities that we can leverage on. But importantly, something that I'm extremely passionate about is that we need to uplift our people from a socio-economic point of view. We need to close the gap. As some of you are aware, in terms of development indices, whether it's in poverty, whether it's in access to health, access to education, we're ever at the bottom of the statistics, and we need to be able to do something. And these insights from Growth Well should be able to contribute, whether to a public policymaker, whether to an entrepreneur, a business person, in terms of the hows of how we can really drive this. As an example, over 600 people in Africa still don't have access to modern energy. And I've talked about the plummeting price of technologies like solar. It is predicted that in a few years' time, solar should be so inexpensive and so accessible with high capacity that it should almost be free. And imagine what that can do for our African continent in terms of industrialization. So really, the 600 people, hundreds of millions of people still don't have access to clean water. So health issues, education, we still have enrollments that are not up to par. We need to work on those. So hopefully when we have the conversation with experts, excited debate and discussion, this should really provide some solutions that we should be able to look at to close the gap. Well, what is the good news? It's not all doom and gloom for our continent, good people. As an example, countries like Kenya, in terms of fintech and technologies, and Nigeria, they've experienced a big boom in terms of the technology space. And also my own country here in Botswana, we've been leading now for decades in terms of peace, in terms of tranquility, in terms of corruption, in terms of freedom indices. We are just on par now competing with other countries outside Africa with these specific statistics. So there are aspects of our continent that we can leverage. We look at a country like South Africa, like Zimbabwe, beautiful landscapes, beautiful tourism that they experience. These are all the good things that we can put forward before the world. But most importantly, it is what the African Union or the leaders of the continent have done with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that has come to bear, that now with this free trade agreement, we have access to over 1 billion people mega market. So this really should provide huge opportunities for our people where now we're on par with your China, with your India in terms of population. All we need is growth oil and others so that we can start pumping up our economy to again be able to close the gap. So what are the objectives of Growth Well podcast? Well, in summary, it is to contribute to insights and ideas that can impact on the continent positively. Let me dare repeat that again, is to contribute to ideas and insights using evidence-based research, access to top people, experts and scientists throughout the world that can really help us to see how we can better our continent. Importantly also is to enlighten the world about the positive and awesome aspects of our continent. Sometimes it's really sad how we get perspectives of our continent from a Eurocentric point of view or from an American perspective. And I think as experts, as speakers, as leaders, we need to come out and be able to portray our own continent in positive light, because there are a lot of good things that are happening with our continent that need not remain underneath the carpet. Also, inspire or inspiration of our youth. As you know, in Africa, we've got a huge population of youth that need to be inspired, that we need to really rattle this entrepreneurial landscape so that they can be able to thrive with our startup ecosystem. For instance, we've got access to people like, for instance, with the Chile Startup Project, which some of you will know that is one of the leading startup ecosystems in the world. We've got access to some of the people that participated in that startup infrastructure. We can call them into our podcast and share perspectives in terms of how we can leverage that for our continent as well. But importantly, the main objective as well is to create a happier society, whether you are in Southern Africa, whether you're in Nigeria. We're going to bring, because without a happier society, we will not perform. And this is evidence-based from neuroscience studies that a happier person is going to be creative, is going to be more innovative, is going to make a better leader, is going to make more money. So I hope you find there's something that interests you as well. So in terms of our target audience, which is very important, because podcasts, we need the numbers, as you all know. So the first thing, obviously, is our entrepreneurs, as I've said, and business people out there that wish to explore the art and science of how to grow a business, how to start up a business. I've got my personal experience as someone who started businesses that have failed, that have succeeded. So I'm very much prepared to share honestly in terms of how that has developed. Also, importantly, from entrepreneurship and business, we will share aspects of leadership from experts, people like Peter Drucker, from John Collins, which have been very influential in terms of my career as a leader, also as an established speaker in society. Also, global audience. Global audience, I've talked about how sometimes the perception of Africa is on the wrong side. And we have to take responsibility as leaders in Africa to go out there. And obviously, the connectivity, the internet provide us with some of the best platforms to be able to inform and educate the rest of the world about who we truly are and share even some of our inheritance, such as concepts like Ubuntu. As we call it in Botswana, we call it Boto, or in terms of in Soto. So these concepts that build in terms of a better society, talking about solidarity, the use of our traditional democratic principles like Lekotla, which is premised on how us here in Southern Africa have always held our democratic startups. So these are principles that we will also use to educate the people out there. But by and large, growth well is for everybody. So whether you are a worker, whether you are unemployed and you just wish, whether you're a student, please join us as we go into this fun trip of educating you how you can grow personally, how you can be a happier person and better contributor to society. So with those few words, I can just conclude by saying, please join us next week on our next episode of Growth Well, the true well of wisdom. Remember what I said at the beginning? As Africans, for us, water is for life. And it's got the nutrients that are required for you to survive. And we're hoping that with Growth Well, we will bring those nutrients, we'll bring the wisdom, the ideas, the experiences that can contribute to your growth. In terms of our moonshot, we're aiming high. We aim to become one of the high-impact, high-profile podcasts in Africa that can reach out to the rest of the world. So we have huge ambitions, but I hope with our very normal, very noble aspirations and MTP or purpose, we're hoping that you can be able to join us. But today, please, you know what to do. Press the subscribe button so that you can give us the oomph that can ensure that we have more people coming to the podcast, and our purpose, which I hope it does sound quite noble to you, we can help it to reach out more and more people and hopefully make Africa not just a better place, but a happier place. See you at our next episode. Thank you so much.